the invitation and we will start. Oh, panicking. Which quickly share my quickly share my quickly share my quickly share my okay. Alrighty, let's start. So today's topic is again two design patterns, and the problems that we will be looking at is how to work with third-party APIs, in other words, with code that doesn't belong to you, how to integrate that code very easily. And adapter will be the design pattern which solves that problem. And another design pattern which we will be looking into is chain of responsibility, or how to create pipes to bubble the requests through. So those are the two design patterns we will be looking into this time. So let's start from a problem. And I will create two variations of a problem. First one, imagine that you have ugly, well, not ugly, but third party API needs to have your own interface. That's the problem. So I will create an interface. Let's call it a writer, for example. Or very technical, application insights writer. And this is a third-party interface. So a writer has a single method, write. It writes a message. And let's have an implementation. So very simple. It pretend it writes the application insights, even though it doesn't. So it writes this message. So there is that. And this is a problem. A problem of... So I still didn't introduce the problem very well, actually. Solution to this problem is here. So we have this interface. Whoops. And the whole problem here is that we have a logger. let's say it's a basic class, a logger. And the whole point is that a logger needs a writer as a dependency. And needs to be public. So a logger, let me just make it somewhat sane logger, that it makes sense. Public void log. Let's create an enum, for example. Level. Info, warning, error. Let's say we have 3 levels. And we pass in a level, and we pass in a message. So what it will do, it will call a writer's method to write, and it will, I forgot to say that it writes a message. So our logger logs at a certain level, a certain message. So it logs a level. And then a message. Let's say align it by 20, by 10. So that's aligned. So that's what our logger does. Super simple. Logs a message. But here's the problem. Let's say we have our own logger, right? Sorry, our own writer. We call it console writer. It's cool and all, but there is a problem. Console writer. It implements a writer, and it writes the console message. Basic. That's fine. Works. But so using this writer thingy, we can create our logger. Logger with console writer. That's easy, that's simple, and that works. So let's say info, and we say hello. And if we run the demo, you'll see that it just prints what we want. Let's clean it up a little bit so that it gets left aligned. And maybe it's a bit too many. Let's say 7. That's not the point. The point is that we just demoed a very basic logger. A logger which logs to console, right? Simple. But what if we wanted to log to application insights? Well, you might think, well, can't we just use this implementation and this interface? Like, why can't, what's the problem with that? And the problem with that is that our logger, we don't want to rewrite our logger. Our logger actually works, and it works as we want it to work. However, what doesn't work is the interface. So here is a problem. Our logger takes iWriters, but now we suddenly want application insights to be the dependency which provides the behavior for writing somewhere. What do we do to use a foreign interface as if it was our own. The problem is that we cannot touch this interface. So I should actually put this as a part of a problem. Third party, your. So this is third party code and this is your code. All right. I will need to rename the namespace third party API. Okay. Adapt interface. Let's call it. Yeah, that's good. And project. Boom. Okay. Cool. Interface. Okay. So we have a console writer which implements a writer interface. We need to do something so that without touching this class or changing this interface, we suddenly somehow adapt it into our own system. So what can we do to achieve this? And the answer is use an adapter pattern, which isn't really a great pattern. It's just common sense. So I'll put solution here maybe. That makes the most sense. And the solution is very simple. We need a wrapping adapting class that would serve as something that takes a foreign interface and makes it our own. So I will call this literally application insights writer adapter. Which implements iWriter. And under the hood, so the pattern is here. It holds the thing it adapts. It holds the thing it adapts. And the thing we adapt is iApplication Insights Writer. And it injects that through a constructor. And the thing, it also, the implementation of this interface is just calling the thing that we are adapting. And in this case, the beauty is that we don't even need to do anything to make it our own. We just recall the thing that we need to use. So write method, we just recall it, as easy as that. And just like that, with an adapter, we can now move it in here as well. So the problem was that you see, there wasn't any implementation before which would implement iWriter, and now we have an adapter which can adapt application insights. So now, like this, we can suddenly, without changing third-party code, use it through our own interface. And the benefit is huge. So here is the demo. As you can see, writing to app insights. We just adapted third-party code through the adapter in our own code base using the iWriter interface. Hello, the Z-Man. I'm doing fine. What about you? To summarize on the problem once again, code does not belong to us, but we want to consume it. We cannot touch this interface. That's not our interface. But we need to use this. How? How do we adapt it? How do we want our logger to write to a console or to app insights. App insights, however, come from another assembly which does not belong to us. We cannot touch that code as it isn't ours. How to make application insights writer implement this interface? And the answer is we encapsulate the, probably it's better suited to be put here. So we encapsulate the app insights writer and the class which encapsulates it implements the interface we need, iWriter. This way, the only missing thing we need to do is to convert the input format, so the input slash output formats, so it does exactly, it conforms to our own interface. Very simple. The thing we adapt is injected, and we just expose minimum behavior needed, which comes from the adaptee. Very, very simple pattern, barely a pattern, because it's just common sense. But it might be difficult to figure it out yourself right away, and therefore a little example helps. So that's one problem that you might face. Another problem would be ugly interface, complex interface, complex class maybe. So another thing you can do with an adapter, if you're working with really, really ugly APIs, you can do something like this. So here is an ugly API. Let's call it something. Again, let's play with writers, right? So you have a writer, and it's a public class writer, and it has a method write X, Y, Z, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, whatever it means. And for some reason, it passes a write by reference, let's say. Okay. So you have a message here, and it outs a result for some reason. Result, so was written, something like that. So we write the message, and we say was written true. Ugly, awful, but you want to use it. What can you do? How do you consume this ugly class in a very convenient way? Obviously, this is not really acceptable. So what you can do is solution. What you can do is, again, wrap it under a class with a nice API. So, pretty writer. Again, the pattern is the same. I wrap the writer from that API. And I expose that awful method through an interface or through the API I want. So I say that it would be nice to expose it through a method, right? And now I need to do the adaptation part. And this is literally an adaptation part. Mapping of APIs. So that ugly interface, that ugly API I hide under my public API. And I just do what it asks me to. And for example, I don't really care about the result. I just want to do it. I realize that it always succeeds, so it was a design mistake by the writer. And ref doesn't really mean much to me. So the problem is this. If I were to call that writer here, it's ugly. I cannot even do this. I cannot even do something like this. And again, I need to do things like this. Yuck, this is bad. So the thing that I win this time with my own writer, the benefit of writing an adapter in my case. Whoa. What's it called? Pretty writer. Oops. Is that I can move that writer and call it in a nice, neat way. Like so. So instead of calling it like this, which is so unnecessary and has so many confusing syntax elements, I adapted and simplified the API to be very conventional, intuitive, and human readable. So that's adapter pattern. That's why it exists. You can wrap something you want and put it under whatever interface you want, or you can wrap something you need, and change the syntax, simplify the API, hide the details you don't need, and expose it in the way you want, like we did here. So to summarize this problem, sometimes the APIs we use are like this: under-designed with an ugly API, sometimes with features that are niche and we don't need ever. Yet it complicates things. Instead of consuming an ugly API, we can adapt it and consume it in a convenient way for us. So instead of using this method, we can use this method: simple, complex. This is complex, this is simple, and we achieve this through an adapter. So adapter is literally like an adapter in real life, where you just put an element in between two input and output elements, so that incompatible input is adapted and becomes compatible. So to summarize, the pattern, use adapter. Oh, what the hell? Use, okay. Ziffa Sword asked, what do you think about... Actually, chat is way too low. Let's put it like this. Ziffa Sword asked, what do you think about adding adapter to the name of adapter classes? I really don't like it in most cases. In my opinion, the only reason why would anyone should do it is that they are not creative enough to give a better name. But that kind of naming every pattern after, naming every solution after a pattern it represents, I think that's just a lack of creativity. It's the same anti-pattern as calling every class or every class that provides logic a service. It doesn't necessarily add much. Certainly you can add a better name. And in reality, there's usually more than just adaptation inside that pattern. So just adding adapter to it might be confusing in the end. So I'm not a fan of that personally. If I give up and cannot come up with a more creative name, it's okay. But if you can come up with a better name, please do. Name logically, not semantically. That's my way of going about such things. Because it needs to represent a logical concept. So, as you can see in my case, I didn't say that's an adapter. I just said it's a pretty writer. So, not a fan of those. here I wrote adapter because I couldn't think of anything else. But you get my point. Okay, so, well, right. I wanted to describe this, so use. I created this as a class and changed the type to MD, and it's still working that way. That's so weird. Use cases. It's still doing that. Wow, that's ReSharper. It was interesting to me how you generated the constructor automatically with writer field as input. How do you do that? I'll show you again. So remove this. If you click on a light bulb, it says initialize field from constructor. Actually, if I press Alt Enter, it opens a selection menu for those things. So if I click on this and press Alt Enter, it opens this selection menu. So if I press Enter again, it does the first thing. So if I just basically did Alt Enter and Enter again, and it auto-generated from the selection screen. Okay. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure you can do that. I'm using ReSharper, but I think you can do this without ReSharper as well. Yeah. Okay, so use cases. So adapter is, oh my God. Adapter is always used with, wow, that's annoying. Adapter is always used with third-party interfaces, APIs. Let's just generalize it. Use cases. Take third-party API with third-party interface and make it your own. Take third-party API, take ugly third-party, complex is a better word. Or take incompatible interface of a, well, that's actually this one. So two use cases, simplify or adapt. That's adapter. Synonyms. Wrapper. Wrapper. That's all, I think. I think there's one more word for it, but wrapper is a good way for it. It's just a wrapper. So that's adapter. Now, chain of responsibility. Let's come up with a problem. We would like to create our own middleware. So let's do that. What I mean by that is let's say logging again. Our logger should log anywhere it could. In fact, it should support logging to different sources simultaneously. How do we do that? Simultaneously, I don't mean in parallel. I mean that it shouldn't just log either to database or to a file or to console. It should log in multiple sources when a single log call is made. How do we create such a combo? So what I mean by that is logger. So let's say private read only iWriter writer. Let's not use the same interface. Let's create our own. Okay, so again, we have a writer interface. Let's call it logging source. We will write to the logging source. However, here's the problem. Only one logging source is supported. What do we do? And in reality, there are multiple things that we could do. First, we could, instead of having one writer, we could have a collection of them. But there is another thing which we could do. So let's do that. Let's create a logger which supports many sources. Not quite. I'm a bit yeah, not quite. Yeah, so logger with many sources. Yeah, so we have logger with one source, but we want logger with many sources. What can we do? So what we can do is have a chain of loggers. So without touching this class, I will chain different loggers together. Now I'm thinking how to do it the best, and I don't want to derp on design. So yeah, usually what happens is that you have something like this. And this is all cool, but on top of this, you'll have this. So what did I just do? I added the same like instance to myself, similar to decorator. I added instance to myself. And when I log, if there is another logger waiting to be logged through, I will call it as well. So if next is not null, I will call log as well. So the essence of pattern is to point to another possible chain in the pipeline. Step. Execute this step in the pipeline if it exists. That's the essence of chain of responsibility. You do the same thing with something that points to yourself. And that's about it. So what do I mean by that? Let's see. Problems, solution. How did I create solution here? Right, middleware. Problematic, and this is solution. Whoops. Let's refactor a bit. And let's create a demo. So let's actually form of recursion. It's not recursion. You're not calling yourself. You're just calling something with maybe a different writer. Or calling the same instance twice, let's say writing twice to the same place. It's up to you how you implement it, though it's not recursion. You're not calling this log, you're calling next log, and only if it exists. The only way this would be infinite recursion if there was first logger pointing to second logger, which points to the first logger again. Or if my next thing that I point to would be myself. That would be recursion, infinite recursion. So those are the points of interest that you should avoid. So let's create a few loggers, I guess. Yep. Let's just say there is iLogger interface. Come on. And this one implements it. And this one implements it as well. So let's add a few implementations. Let's create console logger. And let's create a file logger. More like iWriter. More iWriter it should be. Yeah, sorry. It should be iWriter. Console writer, and another one will be file writer, for example. When we create file writer, we can provide a name, a file to which it writes. Let's say file, string file. So write all text message to a file. Cool. We have file writer and we have console writer. And there is that. So our demo would look like this now. We create a logger with many sources. So I'll call it file logger. With file log writer log.txt. What do you want from me? iWriter, yeah. iWriter, nope. This one, okay. Okay. And another one, console writer. Logger, I mean. Console and file logger. File logger. Console writer. And again, wrong interface. So the point I'm trying to make is that if I call console and file logger and log some message, and run the demo, you'll see that it logs to both places in here. I'm not using .NET 5, am I? Nope. Not even using 3.1, okay. So you can see it logging to both places just like that. Very easy. I don't like the design, to be honest. I know the key part is this thingy, but I'm thinking if I can make it more simple, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I cannot point to the next. My next cannot be iWriter, and this thingy needs, this thingy needs another writer. But the key point here is not that I can write to different sources, but the key point here is that I can do completely different things with the same input, changing it in between or doing something with it in between. That's the whole point. Not that I write to multiple places, but in general that I can do something with the same input, just bubbling it through the pipes. And those pipes are chains, chain of responsibility. So chain of responsibility pattern means that you refer to the next place. It's kind of like divide and conquer, where you don't just write all the possible implementations or all the possible, chains in the same class. You just say that one class does one thing and it just delegates stuff which is unrelated to that one class to another class. So that is a chain of responsibility pattern. That's how middlewares are implemented. At least in C#, you can see, in ASP.NET Core, there's a middleware which literally does this and calls next. Or at least you need to call next when you implement your own middleware. Practically, I can show. It will take a while to implement this, so I'm not sure if I have the time to do so. Do you have any questions about the patterns so far? Do they make sense? So I will try to wrap this up then. To summarize, adapter pattern takes a foreign interface and allows you to make it your own. The idea is very simple. all you need is your own class. In our case, we had App Insights Application Adapter, which implemented a simplified interface iWriter. The problem we were solving because iApplication Insights Writer interface was not really usable in our own domain. It's not domain specific, yet we needed it to be. So we created an adapter which makes that interface domain specific, because we can swap, put the wrapping class under whatever interface we want. And next problem that we were solving was a complex class. An ugly complex class which had hells knows why what syntax. And we created a pretty writer which wrapped around that class and simplified the interaction with it significantly. Chain of responsibility, on the other hand, is just a middleware in plain words, where you have ready next in the chain handler for a request. So when a request comes, in our case, a logging of a message, we pass it through ourselves and then delegate the next call to the next chain. And the next chain does the same. It delegates the next call to the next chain. And so on and so forth infinitely until there is no next chain, indicated by this null conditional operator. So like this, we can do multiple things with the same thing without touching an already completed class. So there's that. Now, Mystic Soda asked, in Express.js module for Node.js, it's the same. You call it the next method. Yeah, I can imagine that it's quite common pattern because it's quite convenient to create chains of things that you want to happen in a simple way. So no magic there. And with this, I will finish the design patterns chapter. And next time, we will move on to more interesting things. We will try to cover Entity Framework Core and learn how to work with databases in the first place. So SQL and Entity Framework will be something that I will try to teach you in the upcoming Saturdays. So thank you all for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.